It's 7:02. I'll call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Town of Norton Zoning Board of Appeals. This was our regularly scheduled meeting. We held a meeting last Wednesday night, from which we're still recovering. So tonight we have, looking for the agenda, there it is. We have a couple things on the agenda, but I think only one hearing that we're going to get into. And that's the first public hearing is the continued application of file 20-13, 40B comprehensive permit application for 195 Mansfield Ave. Applicant owner is AR Building Company and the Gus Nominee Trust. Applicant is seeking a 40B permit to construct a 100-unit rental apartment building, including 25 affordable housing units at, as the name implies, 195 Mansfield Ave. With that, we're welcoming a new ZBA board member tonight, who's actually a rehire. Lucas Wozniak is with us. Lucas was with us until I think a year ago, and went on to try to achieve stardom in Hollywood. And when that didn't work out, he's back with us. But in any event, the members sitting on this 40B, although we're all here, of course, are myself, tell me if I'm wrong, David Wren and Jim Tenori. And was it the September meeting the last time that Jim had actually missed on this application?
It was the September meeting.
And I understand, and Jim, we can see you now, for better or worse. And I understand that Jim has viewed the tape of that meeting or listened to the tape and signed a Mullins form, what I'll call a Mullins form. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Correct,
yep.
The Mullins form, yes.
Okay, so that he is still on board as the voting member for this. Although, yes, we are still eligible, except Lucas, because Lucas hasn't been here yet for this matter. Judy Barrett, thank you for being with us again tonight, our consultant on the 40B, and Mr. Carmichael as well.
And Chair,
and to the others as well. Mr. Freeman, can you just briefly bring us up to date? I know we got a number of filings in our file that I want to go over and look through. But is there a specific comment or direction you want to start us off in?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Just to state for the record, although now you can see me, we're all screen stars, Hollywood or otherwise, in this day and age. But in any event, Peter Freeman representing the applicant. So what has transpired since the last hearing, we have, through Depret Engineering, Brandon Carr and Joe Penny, submitted the revisions that had been discussed and you expected, but we had said we were waiting for final peer review and all of that. So we submitted those revised plans. In response, Pat Brennan from Amory did a review, and again, very quickly and expeditiously, which we very much appreciate. And so those are the two main things. The third thing is, I lost track of time, honestly, between pandemic and holiday, but I guess it was last week. Yes, I think towards the end of last week, or might have, no, couldn't have been Monday. That was a holiday. I submitted the slightly revised, updated waiver list because in going through things back probably about 2 months ago, near the start of this hearing, Paul Di Giuseppe kindly talked with me and sent me some emails and said that he thought there were one or two other waivers that we should include or clarify. So what I did is, to make it simpler for the board, I submitted the entire waiver list as we had submitted originally, but I highlighted at the top that it was updated 10/10/20, and then just a few yellow highlights. I won't go through those now. If you want to go through those later, that's fine. But I highlighted the revisions in yellow, which lined up with our discussions with Paul. So I think I would simply say, whatever the pleasure of the board is, if you want to hear from Brandon Carr or Joe as to the minor revisions and doing those things and anything else to come into accord with the suggestions of Pat Brennan, he can do that. And I think there were also some questions that Paul asked, which I would expect he would ask tonight, and I think we the applicant and engineering team, we can answer those questions. So really, that's all I would say by way of introduction.
Okay, thank you. I went through the documents and appreciate the requested waiver update. I actually have a couple of specifics on that, but I guess we'll get to that in a bit. Is our peer review consultant here? And that is, who is speaking? Mr. Brennan, there you are.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Did you get the additional and renewed or newly filed materials that Mr. Freeman was talking about, realizing that I think they came in last Friday or Thursday?
Yes, I did get them, and I actually I reviewed them yesterday and sent a follow-up peer review letter to the board. I emailed it over yesterday. And
Do we have that?
I emailed it to the board.
You did? Okay. I'm not sure I have it, but I'll try to find it as we are talking, so I won't hold things up. I might have printed it out here. I don't recall it. Because that was one of my first questions. Are we going to get a response tonight from our guy? And yes, it sounds like we will, but I'll find the document.
Sure.
By the way, I should note for the record, this is a meeting held by remote access means with reasonable participation provided by the board under to the public. Anybody is invited to take part and to view according to the COVID-19 emergency order by Governor Baker issued last March, and also the emergency orders of the town of Norton. This is the way we've been meeting, providing reasonable access to the public and others who want to take part. And that's being done tonight. And I will ask a bit later if there's anybody here in attendance, from the public, not connected to the project directly, who wants to ask a question or as usual. Now, one other note, the members of the board, I think at least one else of us had problems with the town email in the last few days. They switched over to a new system over the weekend, so we can talk about that later, getting on board with the new email system or the old email system that's now been updated and made more difficult. But, and maybe that's, Paul, maybe I didn't search out in the right email bin, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that a little later. If there's something that anybody's missing, it may be because of the email follies that we've been going through. But in any event, members of the board, do you have any specific issues or questions, or should we just start in as I had gone through these?
I'm good.
Okay, David?
Yeah, I think I'm good. I think I just had a question and can get to it whenever regarding the restriping of the road.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
And let me just ask Peter, is there a logical place to start with the revisions that have been submitted? I have access to the electronic revisions. They're all in the Dropbox. Paul and Nicole put those in there. And I guess the hard copies, Paul, is what we were just talking about earlier today. There are hard copies that retrieve either at town hall or at somebody's house. We'll talk about that later too, but we do have the electronic filings in the Dropbox. So
I think that most of the revisions are more by way of details and things and align with Pat Brennan's initial response, or peer review letter, I should say. I don't know that there are any substantive changes, but I always defer to the engineer. So Joe or Brandon, do you want to go through the highlights?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Brandon Carr with the Preet Engineering. As Peter said, out of the comments, I think, most of them were either clarifying some calculations, some details, some notes. The one kind of design or layout change that was made was we removed, I think it was 20 parking spaces across the back here. So this used to have head-in parking. I'm pointing to a plan and I'm not sharing my screen. So one second, sorry. All right, can everybody see the plan?
not yet.
There we go. Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So as you remember, the Mansfield Ave is on the left side here, the building's in the center, and then we had parking pretty much a loop around the building, and then with the larger parking lot in the rear here. And the one, major change, or one really only change to the layout design was we used to have another row of parking along the back here. So we had 179 parking spaces when you last saw it. And we eliminated 20 spaces to bring that down to 159. So that's a little over 1.5, it's about 1.6 spaces per unit since there's 100 units. And, the developer feels comfortable with that number of parking spaces. And, that allowed us a little more green space, reduce some of impervious, and, just tighten up the project a little bit. But other than that, the revisions were mostly calculations or clarifying some things. I'm going through the list now. I don't really see anything else to point out on the plans.
As long as we're here, I have a couple of questions on this sheet, if I can, and tell me if if somebody else should be answering, just they can chime in for your team.
Sure.
What the parking lot in the lower left, which is actually, I guess, the southwesterly corner, the entrance isn't darkened. Is there a reason? Does that mean something?
Here. So that would be an emergency entrance only. So it would be some sort of, we'll have to, since most of it is in the Massachusetts Department of Transportation right away, we'll have to work through what the final surface would be, but it would be something that didn't look like a typical pavement. And the fire department had requested that, since that, just because they would be responding from the site for the most part, they'd be coming from the south up Mansfield Avenue. So that would allow them to, one, it allows them another entrance in case for some reason this one was blocked, but it also allows them an easier access to the southern side of the building here. So that would be a gated emergency only access.
I thought that, did you flip that from the north to the south side though?
No, it's always been that kind of configuration.
Okay, I don't know why I was imagining it on the
I think
northern.
you're thinking of the other one, Tom.
Sorry. Oh, is that so,
You're thinking of
David?
the I think you're thinking of the second project.
I see. That may be. Thanks.
Can I jump in real quick?
course.
I
Yep.
did have a question. I know I read some information about, you guys were talking about, we had discussed a sidewalk. And I know that's obviously in conjunction with Mass DOT. That's not indicated on here. Is that because it hasn't been approved by Mass DOT yet, or you guys are still in talks? And then also, would it be, how this driveway isn't going to be look like a typical driveway, obviously, so people can't drive in. I just wonder how the sidewalk, if it was to be approved or put in, how that would look.
Yes, so, we would have to be one with the sidewalk in this entrance, just speaking that, there's ways we could do it. We could offset the sidewalk back off the edge of the road. The right of way is pretty wide here, so we could bring it, back here so that it wasn't right up against the road and it was higher. We could, again, make it out of a different material or a different color so it, appeared like a sidewalk and not like a driveway. That's the big thing with this, is to make it look like it's not. So, the fire and emergency responders know it's there, but, the normal day-to-day traffic's not pulling in there. The sidewalk itself, we had talked about connectivity to the shopping plaza, and, that the applicant didn't necessarily want a connection in the rear of the site. We've been talking, and we did discuss it with Mass DOT, and basically the way that goes is we submit to Mass DOT after we get our town approvals. And I think where we landed with, and Jason can jump in if I'm wrong, Jason, at AR Building, but we'd be willing to propose a sidewalk to Mass DOT, but it's really up to them if they were to approve it in front of our site. We didn't want to be, we didn't want to be tied to it, formally in this approval. We can make it a condition that we propose, and if Mass DOT allows it, install a sidewalk or install it in the future when, if there's any improvements planned in the area. We just didn't want it to be required by the town and then denied by DOT and kind of stuck in the middle there. So we'd be okay with it making a condition that, when we apply to DOT, we apply, to install a sidewalk along our frontage and subject to their approval.
Yep. And yep, that is a change from the last time. Jim, that I think the applicants come back and said, yeah, they will go along with our request that we had voiced. So I'd request, I guess, that it be from boundary line to boundary line along the front end. Can you just tell us, why would the DOT say no to something like this? What are some just random examples?
I mean, I think they would lean towards saying yes. You know, the only thing I could see them saying possibly no is there's no sidewalks out here today, so it's kind of disjointed. When it's in there right away, it's something also they have to maintain. So, you know, where are you sending people that are walking up and down the street? There's probably already people, you know, pedestrians on the street. They're just not using a sidewalk because it doesn't exist. So when they walk in front of our site, they would use the sidewalk. But sometimes, you know, DOT would say, all right, you're, you know, extending a sidewalk here, and then where do they go from there? But, you know, it also, you know, as you get different developments in the area to add sidewalk in front of your site, it takes pieces that DOT then has to build away. So, you know, it adds, you know, they get a free sidewalk out of it. So I would say that they would lean towards approving it. We just in case they didn't approve it for some strange reason, we didn't, you know.
No, I understand what the applicant's saying. They don't want to be subject to a sidewalk approval that they can't control.
Correct.
I know that the property just to the north did some drainage work, it looked like, in the last few weeks. I don't know if that gentleman is with us, but does that affect anything that we're talking about here? Any improvements that he is making or has made to his property? And I don't know why that was put there, or, you know, who permitted that or whatever.
Just to know.
Curious. Yeah, Chris?
No, they added a sign out front within the last 6 weeks, and then they added a few parking spaces. I don't know that they added drainage.
Oh, it looked like there are stones in a swale up front.
Okay, it might be.
It looks like a retaining pool.
Is it between the parking and the sign?
Right on the road in one corner, actually, I think. I mean, I can't really.
That's number 199. That's going to be Mansfield Oil.
Yeah. I'm just curious whether that affects anything we're talking about.
I mean, as long as they installed it in front of their property and not ours, it wouldn't affect our, you know, our development.
Right. They each have to do their own calculations. They can't just assume what's going to happen on another, and it's illegal for them to drain onto another property. So they have to calculate it for their own impervious area.
I'm just curious if anyone knew what they did there. I mean, it looks, you know, neat anyway. I don't know what the purpose was, and I didn't stop to study it. I'm just asking if anyone knew. We'll find out.
If I could just add one note regarding the sidewalks, I did a little research on this because I saw the report that came across in the emails regarding the sidewalk. So there is a sidewalk across the street at the Norton Senior Center. And to Brandon's point, creating a sidewalk situation from property line to property line is sort of just a random sidewalk. And there are no sidewalks going towards Great Woods or the other way. The sidewalk's actually across the street. It goes from the outer parts entrance down towards the senior center. So I think the conversation may be creating a crosswalk across Mansfield Ave, a demarcation for a crosswalk, maybe with some type of lighted sign that people can cross the street to get to that sidewalk from this apartment building. And then the other thing, I think we all know human nature is going to be quite a bit of people from the 100 units, and hopefully some kind of grocery store shows up at Great Woods at some point. You know, is there a plan of somehow getting people safely from the apartment building to Great Woods, considering there is no sidewalk on that side of the street? So I don't know if it's creating a crosswalk to get across and then they walk down. I just think it's something that the board should think about.
Well, that's why we started talking about the sidewalk, because we all kind of came to the agreement that someone from here is going to go into the shopping complex, and to have them walk on the side of a road that has no sidewalk.
Yeah, so the sidewalk's across the street right now. It's even shown on Google Maps. And that sidewalk goes across the entire property of the senior center event, essentially. But then it also randomly stops right in front of Great Woods.
That's like this area somewhere, right across from McDonald's.
Yeah, somewhere around in that area. So if I guess from common sense perspective, if Mass DOT did get involved involved at any level, they would probably want to continue the sidewalk on that one side of the street and not have people jumping across the street.
Well, but it's in our interest to request what we think is, appropriate. And
Absolutely. So
I note the other apartments just to the north of the oil delivery company too. And, those people will be, and do use the street and to get to Great Woods Marketplace. So I think I understand what you're saying, that may be a reason DOT says, hold on, let's plan this
I'm not
out
saying
more.
no to the sidewalk. What I'm saying is if we are going to go down this path, and I don't think it's not a bad idea, but there is a sidewalk across the street, so we should consider as well possibly a crosswalk so people can cross the street if they need to.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. That's exclusively DOT though, isn't it? Who can?
Correct. Yeah, that's a DOT street, so we would have to discuss it with them.
Okay.
Right, and they will probably look at factors including the amount of traffic, because this is what they call a mid-block crossing. So they're going to look at a number of variables before they would approve a crosswalk.
Okay.
They might look at, there's a number of things. They could look at the main entryway at Great Woods and have a crosswalk there potentially. I mean, we would love, as a town, we would love to see a red light there. We don't have one. I do want to point out, just to answer Lucas's question or comment that was made, there are no plans in this would fall under the state's transportation improvement program. We don't have any plans for this area to have sidewalks.
Wow.
So, the significance of that is we'd be looking, even if we worked on it today, and we'd be looking at 5-6 years out at best to get something in this area. So it's a challenge because this is a very deficient, infrastructure deficient area, especially for walking.
Yeah.
Everything here would be great. Certainly our biggest point was to connect people to the shopping center. And I think it could be appropriate to at least put a condition in if the board wants to look at a crosswalk, to condition it upon DOT approval, if they were able to do it.
But that's not something that the applicant could be responsible for anyway. Is it a crosswalk? I mean, it goes to the point of their property or to the sidewalk. So.
Yeah, I would, that's always a challenge, but I would say I'm not sure what people in their project would be crossing for. You could make the connection between their project and the shopping center.
Right.
But what's across the street that they would be crossing for? That's a trickier one.
But I'm saying the responsibility isn't up to the applicant to lobby the state for a crosswalk there.
Right, no.
That's our responsibility. I think it's a good idea, but I don't know where it would be best located.
Yeah. Well, and the challenge again is you're putting people across the street where there's largely no sidewalks to begin with.
So I think we stick to what we said, sidewalk in front of the applicant's property, except for the entrances, that has to be engineered there, of course, and not condition the permit itself on, Department of Transportation approval. But it's good that the applicant's agreeing to, to go forward and try to plan that out, include that. I mean, anybody else on the sidewalk issue? Okay, so I had another question on this plan sheet. There was a note about vertical monuments on the north boundary. Am I reading that to say that some of the old property markers are on this side of the fence, for lack of a better way to put it?
Yeah, I think the peer reviewer brought this up, and we had actually noticed it when we did our survey. We actually went back out another time to redo this side, but you can see the monumentation on this northern property line. We assume wasn't correctly installed, and it looks like it was maybe a couple different versions of it, but we ran the boundary from plans of record and retracing all the surveys that we had, and it seemed like this monumentation on this side was just inaccurate. So
But the monumentation, are those the pipes and the concrete?
yeah, there's an iron pin and concrete bounds out
Okay.
there. So that's what's this, disgusting. And I had the same conversation with our surveyor when they finished their property boundary, and we went out and rechecked it, and it seems like it's incorrect.
Okay, so is there a marker there now so that the neighbor to the north can see where you're claiming? Does the neighbor agree with your assessment?
I don't know if we've had that, discussion with them. It's off, a couple feet, I think in the rear here. I'm just looking at the scale. Where's the scale? It's probably off maybe 4 feet in the back here, and then closes to maybe a foot up here.
Right, so I'm just asking, is there a fence there or a ribbon now or anything?
There is a fence there, and it's I think it's on the boundary, because I think all this monumentation is on our side of the fence, I believe.
Okay. Well, I'm just curious as to whether the neighbor says anything different. It's not really our concern. I mean, you have to have control of the site that you're presenting to us, so I'll assume that you do.
Okay.
I'm just curious whether he.
Yeah, I mean, it's a interesting little, piece of the project for sure.
Okay. Were there other questions on this plan sheet specifically? There were some issues about the turning circle to the north on the north side. There's a little island there, and one of the questions was, should you get rid of the island? But the answer was, well, you're trying to make it a alternate drop-off or move-in site, which seems to make sense. I saw that, unless our consultant or any of the members have any questions on that. And then the other feature was the fire department did get back to us, I think last Wednesday, by email saying they were fine with the revised plans. It was just that, we're fine with the plans. But there's also a plan that was in the packet showing the largest apparatus, I guess, that we own, and how it will be, thank you, positioned going into and out of the site, and just showing visually that, it can be done. And the fire department said they were okay with this. Correct?
Correct, yeah. We got the exact specifications of their largest truck, entered it in our program. These programs tend to be a little conservative too, but it shows that, they can maneuver coming from any direction into and out of the site and moving through the site.
Now, can the fire department come from the south and get into the main north entrance too?
It can, yes. It can't make, the only movement into the site, and that's what really spurred this entrance, was coming from the south. And if they wanted to make this U-turn coming to the south, I mean, it's a fire truck. At the end of the day, if they really had to make it, they would hop the curb and they'd go over the grass and stuff. But that's what really spurred this extra entrance, was so that when they're coming from the south, if they wanted to pull up to the south side of the building or go to the back, say there's something going on over here, they had that access here.
Yeah.
Because that was the tough movement, coming from the south and making that almost a U-turn into the site here. They can easily make that turn, but.
So what kind of gate control is there? I mean, is it a gate with a key on it that they have to have a key for, or is it remote operated, or what's that technology?
We haven't, specified the exact apparatus, but typically it's called a Knox box, and it's a box. A lot of sites in town probably have them, and the fire department has like a master key that opens all these boxes, and there's a key to the, either they open the box and there's a key to the gate, or they open the box and there's actually like a mechanism to open the gate. So they would pull in, that's why the gate's set back, is that they could pull in, park their truck out of the road, open the gate, and then they'd come in.
Okay.
So Chair, just to add to that, so typically what happens then is once the project is nearing its final certificate of occupancy, police and fire will go out with the applicant and, work out the details of how they enter it. So Brandon's right, but they do tests before then to make sure that the Knox box is working fine. And so that way they get familiar with the site and get their procedures down for both police and fire.
Yeah. I just didn't know how that worked, how the locking worked. Okay, interesting. Members, any questions on this plan sheet? Maybe we can come back to it if we have more questions later, but
Tom, I've got one question with the,
Go ahead.
the snow storage plan. If you could go back to that sheet. Since there's no snow storage proposed at the very rear of the property, which is probably where they're going to stack it because that's what makes sense for that rear lot. Oh, there is up at the top. Sorry, I didn't see that little number.
There's
up there.
somewhere along the back here.
Oh, that whole spot around the back is snow storage.
Yeah, we kept that clear of, landscaping. We set our trees back a little bit so that
Gotcha.
basically they could push the snow off that back edge.
And ComCom's got no problem with that being close to the edge of the buffer zones or anything? How far is that from the buffer?
No, I mean, this is the 50-foot buffers here. This is the 100-foot buffer. So it's
Yeah,
outside the 100-foot buffer. Yeah.
Don't even go any farther. Plenty of room. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, I just didn't see that note at the top.
No, it's good. Good issue. I hadn't spotted that. I hadn't thought of it. So good. Anybody else on this specific plan sheet? If not, go ahead. Sorry.
Here, do you mind if I ask
Of course.
about the parking?
Of course.
So Brandon, you guys did remove 20 spaces and down to 159. I responded back, is there any way you would be able to take more out? Because it still seems like it's a bit high, but I realize that, you're not significantly over anymore, but are there opportunities to take, to remove any additional parking?
I mean, we discussed it as a team. They, AR building on a lot of their projects and all the projects they do with us, they really like to be between that, like 1.6 to 1.75 spaces per unit is what they see. And we have a couple projects that they built, and that's what they find. They have a lot of projects that they built, but we have a few that we've done for them around in Rhode Island mostly. And, that's the kind of ratio they're at. And they find that that operates well with, accommodating visitors and people that might be coming to see apartments and, day to day. But so we're on the lower end of what they typically use. I mean, other developers we work with are up around 2 spaces per unit. So I would say AR is definitely on the lower end, and we're kind of on the lower end of their window. So they feel, they need the 159 is kind of where they feel comfortable. So, we're not proposing to remove any more parking.
I have to speak up. I agree with Paul. I mean, I do a lot of work with 40B, a lot of work with boards of appeal all over Eastern Massachusetts. And this is a higher ratio than I've seen in any of the other projects I'm working on, not in transit areas, just suburbs. It's high. I mean, so I think Paul is asking a legitimate question. If anybody's providing 2 spaces per unit for multifamily housing, shame on them.
I would agree with the 2 spaces per unit. I'm not,
It's nuts. Sorry.
Which is a good assessment of our zoning bylaw in a microcosm.
But
Right.
this is 1.59, right?
Yeah, 1.59.
Well, my only commentary, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Peter Freeman speaking, is simply that, AR does have a lot of experience, and to the points being made by Paul and Judy, it's at some point, when the developer has the vast experience that this particular developer does, and, albeit there is great woods next door, but, it's still a site, where you don't want to lower it like you could in a city or a suburb like Brookline with a very poster child near the subway and near lots of bus lines and things like that. So, my point is not that your point is not sometimes well taken on a specific site, but here, with the experience of the developer, I'm uncomfortable having a requirement that, doesn't jibe with their direct experience.
So just to be clear, Peter, I'm not talking about Brookline.
I know you're talking about other suburban sites, but I mean, I also do, as you
So-
know, many 40Bs, and my experience is not the same as yours with my clients. It's much more in keeping with the range that, that Brandon just described.
Judy, do you have a suggested ratio for a town like Norton and a spot like this?
Well,
Because
a
in the
spot like-
past, we've always been concerned that not enough parking was provided for projects like this. And we've said, well, we don't want people wandering off site to leave their cars for a day or two. But, what ratio do you recommend, Judy?
given the location, the proximity to goods and services next door, you know, I would probably say 1.4 maybe is what I'm used to. 1.3 to 1.4 is kind of what I'm used to seeing.
Wow, I'm
But I mean,
surprised.
I'm not, you know, and I'm not designing their project, so I don't want to be difficult. I mean, I respect the fact that the applicant, you know, developed housing, but I am seeing these ratios come down everywhere. You know, this is a big concern to planners. The amount of parking that we're building that ends up sitting vacant and simply creates environmental problems that are avoidable if we just didn't build so much parking.
Yeah, and Chair, just to add to Judy, you know, typically the problem is not underparked for new projects in the last 30 years.
Right.
They're most frequently overparked. You know, they try to balance, like if it's a retail project, they'll try to balance that peak time, like day after Thanksgiving. And, you know, but then you see the shopping malls around other times and they're half full, right? So that's typical of residential as well. Not as extreme, but we're just wanting to make sure that,
Okay.
that the numbers more in alignment with it. They're not really that, I don't think they're that far out now. It's just, can it be refined a bit more?
Well, you're talking about another reduction of another 18 spaces to get it to 1.4, right? So, but let me ask something related. I see on one of the waivers, isn't there a width reduction of a foot on the parking spaces, or was that a length reduction of a foot?
I'm just checking the exact wording. Yeah, it is. It's the length.
Okay. So, I mean, what would we suggest? It's up to the board, you know, to ask the applicant if we want to see fewer parking spaces. We can ask them again to show us an alternate plan shaving off a number. It's 158 now. That's 1.58 because it's 100 units, right? So going down to 1.4 would be taking off 18 units, and I assume they would. Well, I don't know where they'd come off. I guess if you want to ask for that, you know, we can ask for that and leave it up to the applicant, or make a suggestion. How do the other members feel?
I personally feel that the way it's designed right now, and considering that we are in the suburbs, we are in Norton, we are not next to a train station, people who are living in this apartment will have visitors coming over. I guess it doesn't hurt to have an extra 18 parking spaces. I mean, we're talking about 18 parking spaces, not 100. You know, the number is coming down because Uber and Lyft and people are using other means of transportation. That's why the number of vehicles parked at night is coming down. But I think we're splitting hairs for 18 spots on a project of this size. I mean, I think the worst case scenario, you know, you don't want people parking at Great Woods and walking through the back alley to the apartment when they're visiting.
That was going to be my point.
Or more likely, I mean, people parking in the McDonald's parking lot next door if they're
And
visiting.
walking over.
And walking over.
But, you know, just eyeballing this, if we were to take 18 spaces, I'm looking at the easterly end, you know, by the infiltration pond. I mean, you could take 3 spaces, 3 spaces, 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there. You'd shave off, you know, 3 spaces off the right of all of those rows, I guess, or the 2 spaces on, you know, in the outer rows, and then some combination. But so it is a savings potentially of, you know, I don't know how much area that is impervious surface. If you want to do it, you know, request it, or if not 18, 15 or 14. It's up to us.
What about the possibility of not building all of the parking right away? I mean, I've seen that on a lot of projects where there's like this concept of reserve parking. And so if you don't need it, you don't build it. If you need it, then, you know, after a year, if it looks like the demand is such, then you could build the spaces you didn't build right away.
Isn't that what we're talking about, or is that different?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add, Jason Kambitsis with AR Building, he keeps popping in and off. He was texting me. He's having some connectivity issues. So, and that's what we were just talking about. I mean, he just wanted to say that, you know, from their standpoint, they're not looking to build a lot of parking. I mean, it costs them more money to build, it costs them more money to maintain it. You know, they're not going to build parking. This is what they see from the market determining, but they would agree to maybe, you know, leave the plan as it is, leave the stormwater designed as it is to accommodate that extra parking. And just like Judy was saying, you know, maybe like these 2 rows of 9 spaces back here, or these 2 in the middle, leave them grass for now. And then if they need to build the parking, if when they fully rent out, they're finding they're short on parking, they could install those spaces at that time.
Sure, if that can be written into a plan and a decision, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine with me. In other words, not changing the overall dimensions and structure, but marking certain spaces that you're going to keep undeveloped for now.
Yeah, and when you have to build them, would you please call me and tell me? Because I want to come and actually see that demand for parking.
Of course.
Boy, we have people on this panel tonight that just want to be right. That's great. No, it's good.
I'll bring you, Judy.
I have no idea about parking numbers. I just remember in the past, we've always said, gee, are there enough spaces there? We don't want neighbors, you know, parking on other properties. I'm talking about up on 123, you know, Red Mill Village and all of that. I mean, but maybe that was a reaction of neighbors there who were lobbying so that we wouldn't have overflow on their property. I don't know.
Well, your engineering peer review consultant probably wants to have my head at this point for even sticking my nose in on this, but it is an issue that I just see so often, that these developments get overparked.
Okay. Pat, Brennan, do you have any view on this, contrary to, you know, leaving it as is, except demarcating certain spaces, you know, shall be left as lawn or green space, but shall be allowed at the option of the builder? I mean, I don't know how we would word that, but I'm sure we can find out with Peter and town council's help.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when Brandon was pointing it out, I think the optimal spaces to leave are those 18 in the middle, because then you eliminate that access drive between there too. So it's actually a nice green area for people to use if it isn't needed as parking.
Exactly.
It would be nice, attractive, sure.
Yeah. That condition is not hard to write, Tom, because there's actually a lot of bylaws I've worked with over time that provide for reserve parking. And so there's some language we can craft around that.
Okay, well, thank you. Then let's, can we move forward on that basis? Take 18 and unless there's a reason not to do the middle 18 there that we're all looking at, you know.
I think this makes the most sense, these 18 right here, because exactly like Pat was saying, get rid of that.
On the next plan revision, you know, just show it and or on the detail or on the key, you know, say that these spaces shall be kept green, you know, at the initial stage or something like that. Just make it work, and great. We can.
If you put it on the plan, that'll be like a reserve parking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then does the applicant owner then later have to come back to notify us?
No, because the way we would write the condition, I mean, Paul, I defer to you on this, but the way I've typically written this condition, it's reserve parking, and, you know, within a year, if the demand for the spaces, you know, actually exists, then the building inspector can authorize the construction of the parking. But you've basically already approved it because you've approved the plan, and you're just simply marking that area as not to be built,
Right.
you know, within the first 12 months or something.
Because Chris Carmichael is always going to be involved whenever there's a change. So
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that sounds good. If everybody's okay with that, let's move forward on that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Where do we go next, Peter? With either detail by detail or a specific plan sheet? What are you comfortable with?
The only other thing, again, deferring to Brandon, but I think we also submitted the more precise left turn lane that had been discussed, which is also something we would accept as a condition. But again, as with the other business, it has to be subject to the approval of MassDOT.
And that was a separate page that I had and printed out separately. In other words, it's not part of the plan set, is it?
No, it was a separate standalone sheet, and I think Derek from Vanessa is here if he wants to go through this.
Yeah, sure. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi guys, this is Derek Roach, Vanessa and Associates. So as you can see here from the plan we got, this is east-west. So Mansfield Avenue is east-west right now. So the site is to the south of us on this image. So what we're really doing is we're just mirroring the left turn lane that's going into the Auto Parts International driveway. Currently, there's a striped paint out there, and because of that, there's no need to widen the road or anything. We can do everything within the existing width of the road. We just restripe. We'll stripe in a left turn lane. It's about 150-foot bay, and then we'll leave the little end of the median painted there. None of this stuff is raised. This is all painted on the pavement. And so this is, that's pretty much it.
We had just asked you to show us what it would be like and where it would be. So thank you.
No problem.
Any questions, Judy or members or Paul?
I don't.
No.
And again, that's all DOT approval, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. One random note I had on the plan set, I think the fourth page was misnumbered. There it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, I think, instead of 4. Is that it?
Yeah, sometimes with our survey plans, if they're done earlier, we plug them in and they were prepared as a 1 of 1. But yeah, we can.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to note, I didn't know if mine was messed up here that I printed out, so. Okay, there's also a photometric plan, which on my best printer doesn't show much at all. Doesn't print out very well on my best printer.
Yeah, those don't always look great. Let me find it here, and I'll put it up.
Yep, it was a separate email again, I think.
Right, it was.
And I could see it on the screen blown up, what you're doing, but it doesn't look very much on a 8.5 by 11. There you go. So can you just tell us what we're seeing? Are the red blobs where overhead lights are going?
Yes, so the circles are basically the light radiuses around the poles. So the poles are tough to see, but if you really zoom in, the photometric professional field, I would say, is not great on graphical presentation. So it's tough to get a photometrics plan that looks beautiful. So these are kind of the different intensities of light. The blue line signifies, I think it's basically 0.5 foot candles, which is very, very low lighting. I mean, usually the town regulation is 0 spillover or 0.5 spillover at the property lines. We show 0 spillover, other than in a couple, 0.1, 0.1 here, and at the entrances.
Ours is 0.1.
Yeah, so.
Really?
Yeah.
So all that you can see, there's kind of moving around the site clockwise. There's lights here, here, here along the perimeter of the development, and then a couple in the back parking area here. These are double lights. These are all singles. They're all facing interior to the development. They'll all be shielded, from above and from behind. I think there's some better views here. Kind of. Now sometimes they do a heat map kind of view, but.
Okay.
But that's kind of what you're looking at.
So do you need a waiver for where it's 0.1 at the edge or no?
I don't believe so.
The 0.1 is the standard you don't want to exceed. So anything over 0.1, we really prefer it be reduced to 0.1 because of light impacts. But looking at it, we saw some 0.2s along the edge, but that was still looked like it was within the property.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just asking. I thought you were suggesting that it exceeded it at a couple points, but fine.
You could actually add screening to any of those lights and then help with the diffraction.
Yeah, in the northern property line, remind you too, we did propose a solid fence, so that would, help out. That's not really modeled in here. The southern property line has an existing chain link fence. Obviously, that's not going to block light, but I mean, it is a shopping center. Their light probably spills over onto our site more
Yeah, I
than,
would agree. These
vice
are both
versa.
commercial properties to the north and to the south. It would be only to the east where you have the mobile home park where you might have an issue.
yeah. And that's, I mean, like we were talking before, the 100-foot buffer to the, I mean, that's almost 200 feet to the property line back here where we have, 0.1.
And foot candle measurements, am I right? That's on the ground on a flat surface, how much light hits that spot? Is that it?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions on this, members? Judy?
No, I'm fine.
Mr. Chairman?
Tom, I just had I guess it was more of a curiosity question than anything,
Yes.
but like in the back area where the islands are there, like why do we have lights in the middle of two islands? And, why isn't it like balanced, I guess? I can see two light poles in the back.
Yeah. I it's just, I think 2 more here would have been a little overkill in the back, and the way they, laid them out. We could maybe put 1 here and 1 here. I think it's just that two lights. I mean, these aren't big lights. I think, adding 2 more here would kind of be overkill and really brighten up that area too much.
Well, now that the center's going to be green space, you might want to just look at whether
You can
it
slide
still
those a
fits.
little bit or adjust those a little bit.
Yeah. I guess I was just thinking, like, I know personally, I guess I would probably park under the, assuming the state, I would park under the lights, because it just seemed like it was unbalanced on the lighting. I would have parked close to the lights, and the other islands I wouldn't have parked under necessarily because it was darker.
Well, if you have my car, you park in the dark, but
Well, maybe. Yeah, but the same thing like that back corner on the Greatwood side of the.
Yep.
It would have been darker over there, so I would assume you would probably not park over there. Less likely.
well, now that the parking is being
Yeah, I don't
reconfigured,
wanna-
maybe the engineer will look at whether other lighting or maybe a ground light in the green area, along one side might be appropriate for
Yeah.
people who want to be out there in the evening or something. But okay,
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on it. I just found it.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is enough light. Again, I don't know what the numbers mean. I'm assuming that this would pass with, there's enough light there to park your car and walk safely in.
Yeah, and this is more, basically when they do their lighting design, they look at the town regulations and they look at kind of industry standards for the different type of use. I mean, the intention here, since it is a residential use, you don't want, it's not lit up like a shopping center or like
Yeah.
walking around Gillette Stadium parking lots, just because, people are walking inside and they have windows and they're going to bed.
Yep.
So it is kind of a more muted lighting, more downward facing shielded lighting than, a shopping center you would see, especially some of the older shopping centers.
And you can see the light structure in that plan set that you were just going through. It's kind of the flat top, overhang.
Yeah, it's an LED structure. This is all screened on the top, so it's really broadcasting the light, pretty much straight down.
I'm assuming this will be appropriate.
Yeah, this is a pretty standard light style that we see on these type of developments.
I know, light pollution is the real concern with most developments. You don't want light spreading out, right? That's what Paul was alluding to.
Correct. You see that a lot in the older, a lot of the older retail plazas where they just have big bulbs that are broadcasting light everywhere.
That's what I was just going to say. The older fixtures are much less
Yeah.
aimable than these new LEDs are. They can really dial in where they're trying to put the light.
And they can be adjusted. The brightness can be adjusted. So if areas are too bright or too dark, when you get them actually in the field, you can dial them down, or you can adjust the timing and all that. They're very easy to kind of modify.
Okay, thank you. No other questions or issues with this? I'll put that in the pile over there. I'm sorry, the pre-engineering O&M plan, I printed out a couple of sheets that I just thought we'd be going through. If it's something we don't have to look at specifically, just say so.
Yeah, that's a pretty standard document. It's just the long-term operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater system. So
Oh,
it details, you know, the different structures and when they have to be inspected and maintained and cleaned.
that was it.
things like that.
There's a whole inspection plan, multi-page inspection plan here.
Correct.
So is this new to us, or was this in our packet in August and July? I'm just asking to the extent our Mr. Brennan, his firm, and Judy need to go over this. I know
Yeah.
was a big issue in past projects because, you know, we don't want you to put something in there and then have it unmaintained
Correct.
and falling apart, giving the town problems later. So is this new in the last week? It's dated, I thought, the 5th or something.
No,
It's-
it was included in the original submission. It was a revised copy to address some of the comments that we received was submitted.
Yeah, it was revised to address a couple of comments that I had in my original review letter. So they did address those comments. So that newer plan satisfies the concerns that I had originally.
So we don't need to go back to the original comments unless anybody wants to raise those or bring them up. This is satisfactory to you, though, Pat, Brennan?
That's correct.
Okay. It's pretty detailed, you know, maintenance plan. And I guess I was thinking when we had a sewer treatment plant on one of the projects, and Peter may remember, you know, that went back and forth for months, getting the maintenance plans, but we're not talking about that here. So this is a different type of maintenance, I guess.
Yeah, it's your typical stormwater operation and maintenance plan that's required by the DEP stormwater standards and most planning board rules and regs for most towns.
Okay. There was something called a downstream handler or something like that that I thought was kind of nifty to look at, but I'm not going to ask for a tutorial on it. It just looked interesting to me. So there are systems to actually keep the water moving, right? I mean, is that what I was
Correct.
seeing?
Yeah, I mean, the main system, just to kind of detail it, the parking lot, you know, is captured in a typical catch basin, conveyed to a pipe to that that system in the back. The downstream defender is what you mentioned, and that removes you know, different suspended solids, oils, water. It treats for the water quality. Then there's an infiltration basin in the back here that handles the smaller storms, infiltrates it back into the ground, and then there's a larger underground detention system under this back parking area that, you know, on the higher storm events contains that water and then slowly meters it out to match the, you know, pre-development flows.
And I saw the detail of, you know, capping the end of any pipes with cages so that no kids are going to crawl in there.
Correct. Yep.
Obviously, that must be standard.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Pat, you already stated you were satisfied with this.
Yes, basically the revised plans did address the comments that I had from my previous letter that we reviewed the last meeting that we had in September. You know, my only remaining concern we kind of just went over, and that was about the photometrics. It's just when they build it, they look like there was a couple of 0.2s and 0.3s up near the handicap spaces on the north side. But those would likely be mitigated from that 6-foot high vinyl fence. But I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Is there any dispute there, Brandon?
No, I mean, let me bring that plan up again. It's really,
Right there.
yeah, it's in this area here. It's this light, and we could look at toning that light down. But, you know, like Pat just said, along this property line, there is that 6-foot fence. That's not really, you know, it's not part of this analysis. I don't know if they can model a fence or a barrier or anything in this program, but it would likely, you know, that would kind of eliminate that issue, we would assume.
Yeah, and like it was mentioned before, if there is an issue, that fixture should be able to be adjusted fairly easily after it's installed.
Yeah.
Right, that is a commercial property to the north. I mean, so if they're, is an issue. It's less of a concern than a residential property, but, we can always make modifications if it is, something is brought to our attention.
Okay, again, I was just asking to see if there are any waivers needed because Paul had mentioned the point one. So I trust you'll look at that. Okay. What I found helpful was the letter from Mr. Carr dated October 6th. It went through a number of the items that had been raised. And we've touched on some of them before. I mean, already tonight, I mean. But if you want to turn to that, I had just highlighted a few things I may want to ask about. It's Depret Engineering October 6th letter signed by Mr. Carr.
Yep, I've got it right here.
Great. The sidewalk, the parking sidewalk we've discussed. Angled shift, I think we discussed that last time. Or maybe not. I mean, someone stop me if you want to ask or talk about these. The placement of the transformer, we had talked about that a bit before. But National Grid actually makes that decision later. That's interesting.
Yeah, we have a plan and a suggestion. They can overrule us and put it, where better access for that, but we try to plan a spot that would work for them.
Circular drive is what we talked about. Access points to the building we talked about. The landscape buffers, those dealt with adequately. Pat, Brendan, I'm asking if you have any responses to this response letter from just last week. Do you have it in front of you, Pat? I don't want to.
Yeah, I have the letter in front of me.
Okay, so you see what I'm asking about. I'm just on number 7 and 8 and 9, talking about landscaping and buffers. Have they addressed our concerns as you had expressed?
These were actually Paul's, but
Yeah, these were mine, but they do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought this was from Pat's August letter.
that's further down in this letter.
Got it. The fencing is discussed. Okay. The signage you think complies, so no waivers?
Correct.
Signage. There's a drawing of the signs in these plans as well. Members can look at and satisfy themselves as to what it will look like. Stormwater management bylaw, which is number 13. Do we grant that, what you're asking for, or is that something that we should ask conservation specifically?
I think Brandon can answer, but we did discuss that either at the last hearing or previous to that or both. It's basically out of caution. It's normally, if it weren't a 40B, yes, it would be actually the conservation agent, I believe, who would report to the Conservation Commission, but I think kind of administratively, the agent would do it. But the problem is it's kind of vague. And so it talks about, I think it's the low impact design to the maximum extent possible. So rather than leave that to some objective judgment, we're just saying, you've seen all the details of what it is. Your peer reviewer has looked at it and Paul DiGiuseppe has looked at it. And so, no problems have been pointed out. So rather than be left in kind of a gray area, we think it's appropriate for the waiver to be granted.
But is that us who grants the waiver, or is that conservation?
Yeah, no, this is because it's the local, completely separate bylaw. It's not under the wetlands protection, it's local.
Okay.
It would be you folks, yes.
Okay, and that's in your waivers already then?
Yes, it was initially. Well, in any case, it is now. I think we had it initially.
Yeah, I saw it at some point, if not in this later on. Okay, just asking.
And Mr. Chairman, when I reviewed their stormwater design, it's my belief that they meet your stormwater bylaw, all the performance standards that are included in it. So I understand the reason for them doing it is they think there's some subjective wording in the bylaw, but as far as the performance standards go, I believe they meet it.
Okay. Then we get to on the third page, I guess that's where Amory Engineering questions come in.
Chair, can I just ask?
Of course.
Thank you. So Peter, I know that you all are going to Concom on Monday. I believe.
I'll defer to Brandon.
Oh, sorry, Brandon.
Yeah.
We've actually continued to November 9th because we just got some comments. Well, we got them a little while ago, but we had to do some additional soil testing out there for conservation. So we're wrapping up a resubmission to them. We're actually resubmitting tomorrow to them. So we're back on. Jennifer had asked us to push that out until their peer review consultant had a chance to look at our changes. And some of it did revolve around the removal of that parking that we agreed to for the ZBA, and they wanted to see that on the plans and things like that.
So do you think any of this will have an impact on meeting our local stormwater bylaw?
No, I mean, any of, what we've discussed tonight or any of their comments? Yep. No.
Okay.
And their peer reviewer, I think, kind of agrees with Pat. And, there was a couple things they had some comments on our soil erosion control report and some of our calculations. They wanted more, specificity and some more detail on that we've provided. But I don't, we meet all the phosphorus, TSS, runoff, all the kind of measurable items. So.
Okay.
So you don't expect that to impact what we're talking about tonight? That's what you're saying?
No.
I think we might have talked about most of these other ones. 5 and 6. We talked about the hydrant in front of the site, just one is adequate. I guess that was pictured there. I didn't note that.
Yeah, that's
Fire department usually requests a hydrant within 100 feet of the fire department connection on the building. So that's why.
Yeah, we had sent this to the fire department. I think they looked at it when they looked at the truck turning, and they agreed there's an existing hydrant that's actually, it's right in the middle of where that emergency entrance was going to be, and we just proposing to move it up out of the way there.
But you don't need one in the back of the building too?
No, they didn't request one, no.
Okay.
The building will be fully sprinkled, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the photometric plan set. Oh, the dumpster. That chain link fence is going to have slats. What about the chain link fence? Let me try that again. Chain link fence along the south. Is that going to have slats in it, or do we need to address that?
That's an existing fence. That's part of the shopping center.
Okay. So that's what you're relying on there.
Yeah.
While we're on fencing, can we go back to number 10 on page 2 quick?
Yeah, go.
We're on the subject.
Of course, yep. Proposed fencing on plans, including any proposed fence on the northern property line. Go ahead. What's your question?
So for a split rail fence being proposed around the stormwater ponds and woods and reservoir, since safety is something we're looking at, split rail fence isn't going to provide access or stop access to a stormwater pond. Just like you brought up, having to gate the ends of the pipes, the outlets of the pipes, how deep, I don't remember exactly how deep that stormwater pond is going to be, but I would assume if it was a safety hazard, they might have already.
Yeah, I mean, the way this at its deepest is around 5 feet deep, and that's not 5 feet of water. I mean, for the 100-year storm, I think there's 3 to 4 feet of water in it. And the sides are 3 to 1 slope. So that's a walkable slope in and out. It's pretty much, was it?
We're still trying to restrict access to it, obviously. You don't want people playing in it. A split rail fence isn't gonna.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a deterrent. And that was something that was actually discussed with the Conservation Commission, where we're close to the wetlands. For wildlife movement and things like that, they don't like physical barriers. That's why they had us stop the site solid fence at the 100-foot buffer.
Yeah.
I mean, we typically don't see ponds anymore fenced just because it becomes more of a kind of an eyesore and nuisance with collecting trash and things like that.
Definitely don't disagree with that, but it's just one of those things that sometimes you typically would see a chain link fence around to restrict access on some places, especially places that probably would have children playing nearby, possibly.
Yeah, the back in the 80s and 90s, we used to put chain link fences around all of these basins. We stopped kind of doing that because either chain link or we put stockade fences. We stopped doing that because there was problems with kids getting into it and not being able to get out. So it was kind of a double-edged thing. And that's why you really don't see fences around these basins anymore for the most part. They're pretty much left open, so you can get access to them for maintenance and that type of thing. And so that you can easily see in, if a kid is playing in there, you can easily see in there. Sometimes if there's a fence in the way, you're not going to see somebody in there, and creates more of a hazard.
Plus, I'm aware of the need to keep barriers out for wildlife too. I've heard that quite a bit, in prior projects. You don't want to fence off where wildlife is, likely to be running across.
I'm good with that explanation.
That's just my memory of prior discussions. Oh, okay. So I'm back to page 4. I'm sorry, 4. We might have gone through all of these already. Yeah, I mean, I guess these were taken care of, but Pat, just chime in if there's something still to be addressed.
No, they took care of them, and I apologize if you don't have my letter that I sent yesterday, but
well, I might have it, but I didn't.
No, I know. But no, I did state in that letter that how they addressed each of my comments. So
Yeah, and here's Pat's letter if any of them you want to take a look at. His last responses are here in bold.
Let me see the top so I see what it looks like. I don't know. I'll have to look for it in my packet, but that's fine. I mean, this is going over the same things we're going over now, I assume.
Correct.
Okay. So just let us know if you have anything in your letter, Pat, that we're not, touching on that we should talk about.
No, they've addressed my comments.
Okay. Then I found, let's see here. That's the maintenance plan again. I found helpful both Paul's tally sheet of things we've been discussing, and then also the requested waiver update. And I suggest going through the waiver updates unless Peter or applicant wants to direct us somewhere else next.
No, I think that's fine unless Brandon or any other member of my team, our team, wants to add something else. But I agree. I was going to suggest the waiver update as well.
And I just have a couple of questions. So maybe we had this in a different form before, but this is the first time that I paid attention to the detail in this. So Peter, you were saying you yellow highlighted things that are new this time.
Correct. It's exactly the same format and mostly the same as the list of requested waivers that was in the application.
Yeah.
I just yellow highlighted, including the date. I found it also helpful for myself as well as zoning boards that any revisions are dated. So this one is 10/10 at the top.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful, of course. Thank you. So Judy and Paul and I were talking offline in the last couple of weeks about how we approach this, and this is really what I was referring to as the applicant's list of waivers. As I said, I hadn't focused on it before, and then I guess we're going to ask Judy to zap this or some of these, when they're in final form, into a more comprehensive documented decision. Peter, is that the way you see it going, Peter, as well?
Yes, that's fine.
Typically, I put these in an exhibit to the decision. It's just a little easier to do it that way.
Sure. Yes, understood.
Yeah.
But I assume, Judy, your model will have the proper, introductory language and the recital of meeting history and things of that sort.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I mean, in the past, I think Peter's submitted something and then council has, you know, edited it and then gone back and forth a couple times. But it doesn't matter where it starts to me, as long as it, you know, has what we need in it, and we need to discuss it at least, you know, once or twice before it's going to be in final form. So I guess I'd invite that anytime we can get it, you know, maybe before the next meeting.
Certainly.
That's just my suggestion.
Yep.
But members, if you want to look at the list of waivers, and the second page I'm looking at, you know, some of the requested waivers are on the right here. Some of them are below the requirements, but Peter, you know, underlined the requirement and then the requested waiver.
Yeah.
Here's where the parking stall comes in. That's where I had seen it. You know, 19 by 19 stall is required, but they're looking for a 19 by 18 foot stall. And 18 was the length of the stall?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I just realized we had a typo here. This should
That
say
shouldn't be.
9.
Yeah.
9 by 19. 9 by 19 is required.
Yeah, I didn't catch that because we made the mistake initially, and so I didn't even
Right.
catch that. But yeah,
No, I was just
That's a-
thinking we're going to have square parking spaces for our
That was going to be really weird.
helicopters or something, right?
We're building less parking, but they're twice the size. So
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on that until this minute. So yeah, well, that's why we go over these. So Peter, it's 9 by 18 instead of 9 by 19, right?
Which is
Yeah.
9 by 18 standard.
correct.
Okay, so really we have a larger requirement in Norton. We have 19 is required. That's oversized, Judy?
Yeah. I
Huh.
mean, well, 9 by 18 is standard. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to criticize your zoning,
All right.
even though I think it's excessive.
The whole code has its
Works.
bylaw.
Sometimes we're excessive too, but you know. Parking, we've gone over.
Hmm.
Waive referral to planning board, that looks pretty standard.
Yep.
I had comment on the number 4 signage.
Hmm.
I would like, we've always said to applicants, can you please be specific?
Yes.
Because this just says requested waiver or grant for signage as shown on the plans. We'd like the dimensions. If you need waiver for a dimension, and Judy, you're nodding your head.
I completely agree.
Okay.
Plan waiver language makes me nuts.
Yeah, because just waiving it doesn't tell us how much we're waiving or how much we're giving up.
Right.
Peter, I'm sure you can work on that with.
Oh, yeah, and I certainly agree with those comments, other than I think we probably felt that the details are on the plan of the sign that we quickly looked at earlier, but that's fine. We can add them here. It makes
Yeah,
sense.
just put them in verbally here. Verbally, we, you know, so we can see them in front of us. Thank you. I think that's the
They
only
were
one I
in
had to
compliance with the
comment on.
signage.
Go ahead, sorry.
I thought they were in compliance with the signage.
Yeah, Brandon, earlier, I think that's what the comments that you had. and
You're right,
again,
Jim. Thank you.
Yeah, so the maximum size is 48 square feet, and we're at 10 by, I guess the actual, even if you consider the base, 12 by 3 feet, so 36. So I don't think we need that waiver, Peter, actually.
Okay,
The
fine.
size of the sign, so
Great.
we can get rid of this one right here.
Great.
Both sections of the signage, 175-8.
Yeah, be careful because the bylaw may combine signs. I forgot.
Yeah, we can double check it, but I thought we had talked about the signage and they were clear. They
I
were
think
good.
they're
but-
dimensionally, they're fine.
We'll double check that.
Yeah, we'll double check it, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, while you're talking about the signage.
Yeah.
We usually request the address be placed on the sign. I don't know if that's on that. If they could go back to that for a second. Do you actually have the address on the sign?
No, it doesn't look like, we can add that.
We'd like that. That's a first responder, and it's helpful for deliveries and location on the street as well.
Right.
Yeah,
We'd request the address on that sign.
okay. I assume this is just an artist's initial rendering anyway, so that's not going to be.
Correct, yeah, so we can definitely have that.
Yep, good point. And are these lighted, illuminated from a different structure, or are these internally illuminated?
Jeff, I think you gave me this.
Yeah, I can, I'm Jeff, Jeff Campbell, the architect with AR Building. We typically don't illuminate these. These are typically just illuminated through the site lighting in general. It's just general lighting.
Oh, okay. Chris, is that pass muster with?
Yes, we just, it's required by law that you have the address on the building, the number of the building on the, it's supposed to be on the building, but it's, as it's set back from the road and we're not gonna see it, we would ask for it on the signage.
Right, but not illuminated specifically is okay?
No, it doesn't need to be illuminated. It needs to be 4-inch high letters and it has to be a contrasting color to the background so we can read it.
I see.
We can certainly work that in.
Okay.
And then when we have time, I'd like to go back to their height requirement and discuss that. If, I don't know if this is the appropriate time or not.
Sure, we can do that. That's here? Yeah. That's number 2 on the waivers. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so there was some confusion when this was originally presented, and I don't know that you quite understand that there's 2 separate sides to this building. There's a 4-story side, and then there's a 5-story side. So I don't know that you've caught that in your review of the buildings or not. So stories above grade plane and grade plane, the definitions are in the building code. So technically this is gonna be 4 stories above grade plane, but one side is gonna be 5 stories. And you need to know that, plus the roof height. So this is not typical. They're gonna build within the limits of the law, but right at the limits of the law and what they're building. They're building a type 5A building almost to the 70 feet height. I would suggest that you look back at 253 Mansfield, where they were going to have a podium style building. That podium style building would allow them to have an expanded footprint in the basement area where you could have parking. That parking would alleviate some of the problems that you were discussing earlier. It would create more open space. It would reduce the impervious surface. So that would be something that you could look at also. So I just wanted you to be aware that this is two-sided buildings. I don't know if it's, what's the side? Is it the southern side that's going to be 5 stories, gentlemen?
Yes. That's correct.
Yeah, right, because the topography of the land is higher, 10 feet higher on the northern side, correct?
Correct. Yep. I'm just trying to pull up that that kind of. Here you go. So
There you
this
go.
is looking at it from Mansfield Avenue. It's 4 stories on the northern side and 5 stories on the southern side.
Right, so I just want that clearly defined within your waiver request, and I wanted the board to be aware of that. Thank you.
And if it helps in the communication, there was a diagram we had shared earlier that I can bring up that does go over the height and how that's accomplished. One of the things I did want to acknowledge was there's a 45-foot height limit. If we had done a flat roof, it would be a 47'6", I believe. But in trying to keep this contextual with the gabled roof, the way that Norton's zoning code reads is it actually reads to the very top of the gable rather than the midpoint. So it does, that's one of the reasons you see that number at the height that it is.
Yeah, we had talked about this, I think, in the August meeting, exactly this. So I remember that, but the waiver, I guess, should be changed to 4 stories on north, 5 stories on south, right? To be clear.
I've made that note, so we'll go over it and clarify it for the next hearing, sure.
And the requested 62.7, I think what Jeff is saying is that 62.7 is to the peak, whereas that's not really where you measure to. Is that what?
That's where the Norton zoning code measures it to, is to the peak. I will say, you know, we went through every local jurisdiction around you measures to the midpoint of the gable, and that's the typical measurement, but it is technically 62.7.
Okay, so it's stated correctly here in the waiver. Okay. I was hearing it differently. Okay. Had the applicant considered parking on the ground level or under the ground level, anything like that? Mr. Carmichael was raising that. I mean, strikes me as a whole different design, but was that ever looked at?
It is something that we've considered in the past. It's not, it has its challenges because effectively, you're not getting that many parking spaces underneath, and you're creating a retaining wall condition that's inside that just frankly adds a lot of cost. It actually wouldn't save much parking in this case because it would get that parking under the building, but it wouldn't actually change our parking counts in any way.
Okay. But I mean, it would reduce the number of spaces outside the building.
It would, yeah. It would also change the number of units that we have pretty dramatically. It would change the, right now we have that common space in the pool area that's down on the lower floor, so we would not be able to do that.
Right.
So it would, I mean, it would be a pretty dramatic change. Basically replacing this floor with parking.
Yeah, I see.
I also remember back at the other meeting saying if we took off a level, would that bring you into the height requirement? And I remember it saying no. I think just doing the quick math.
Yeah, and I think part of the response was that would also make it uneconomic, or it would
Right.
completely change the numbers, and we weren't inclined to, suggest that. But, the open discussion is good if anybody has any, issues with that. Otherwise, just looking over the rest of the waivers that council put together, I think that's all the questions I had. There's some landscaping waivers and the demolition delay. What usually happens and what are you requesting? I just didn't remember seeing this one before.
You have a demolition delay, which is based on the age, and I don't recall what it is. I apologize. But the building, remember, there is a single family house on the property right now, and that will have to be demolished. And it is old enough to, if it weren't for a 40B, to trigger the basically notice provision. What it is you have to notify the town historical commission, and they can make comments within a certain time period. The first step is they would say whether or not it's historic, and we don't think it's historic in any case. But even if they felt it was historic, what they can ask for is a delay of, and I apologize, I don't have my notes. I forget if it's 6 months.
I think it's a year.
Or it might be a year, to try to work things out with the owner. And so it's a delay. It's not a permit per se that's needed. It just would otherwise delay the project. And I think in this case, the benefits of the housing and the design and all of that clearly outweigh, any potential value. And again, we don't have knowledge that it's historic other than by age, which isn't historic. It's just an age thing.
Understood. I think we can communicate with the historical commission just to make sure. I mean, they're on notice. This has been in the works for months.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The historical commission really isn't active right now. We've put memos out to them in the past and they've not responded. So I've taken down numerous older houses within the town that are actually a couple 100 years older than this one. With no objection from them. I don't see that this is a problem. This request for a waiver should not be an issue.
And we've checked all the Mass Historic databases and registration, and this property doesn't show up in
It's
any
not
of
on the
them.
Bristol County Registry, no.
No, it's not on any of them. Yeah.
No.
Okay, so you've done some diligence there, and okay, I just didn't know the process, so thank you for explaining. If anyone has an issue with it, speak up. Judy.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at the demolition delay bylaw. I'm just wondering how this, well, whatever. It's better to just leave it as a waiver, but I'm not even sure this project triggers it.
Yeah, okay. And the rest, I don't think I had any questions on. Unless other members did, or Judy, or our peer review, Mr. Brennan. But it was good to have the waivers on paper and added to like that. So it sounds like, there's going to be another round of some minor changes on paper for us. Paul's list of issues is helpful. The spreadsheet that he put together
And I'll update that for tonight.
But it looks like we've addressed these things that are on here, I think.
Yeah.
So but it's good to see the history of what we have addressed, so we don't have to go over everything again. So what are we looking at? And I'm not closing off the discussion, but are we coming back in 4 weeks with the hope that there might be a, hello? That wasn't mine, was it?
I think it was that, did you guys see a baby quick or something?
Yeah.
Yes.
Something I think flickered my background. My daughter popped up.
She's welcome. We had the other 40B once a cat crossed the camera of, I think, the consultant. But daughters are welcome, sons, cats, whatever, dogs.
Well, I hope she's not still awake upstairs. So.
Yeah, you'll be up late if she is, right? Okay, so what are we doing? Are we coming back in 4 weeks with a hope that, I mean, I don't know what timeline Judy has or Peter has or anybody else has for updating papers, but it sounds like we're, kind of progressing through these things and getting very close to having a draft decision and list of waivers.
Seems that way to me.
Peter?
Yes, and we agree, and I had by email discussed that basically with Paul, and so we agree that keeping the hearing open for any perhaps slight, in my opinion, further discussion, but of course going over the waivers as was just discussed. So I think that about 4 weeks is fine, and we can make the few additional submissions prior to that, but appropriate, as you discussed earlier, to have Judy draft a decision, which, again, as you said, her schedule, if the 4 weeks works with her, and some time for me to, for her to get it to me and the rest of the team, and Paul, of course, Paul Di Giuseppe, then, I think that works.
Okay, when is our next meeting? It's 4 weeks away, isn't it? I think 16th?
November 18th.
Yeah, November 18th.
Okay, thank you. So that's about right.
Can I, sorry to interject, and I don't want to delay anything for my client. I already double booked myself, but fortunately they start at different times. But if it weren't for Zoom, I'd be dead. But I have a Mashpee hearing and a Rainham hearing on November 18th.
Peter, I'm in the same boat. I feel like I'm doing more hearings now than I did before mid-March because of Zoom.
I have 3 this week, yes.
Yeah. So I have a meeting on the 18th as well, but it'll be close enough to being done by the time you guys start that if I have to back out of them a little bit early, it won't be a problem.
Yeah, but Peter can't do the 18th. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I'm
You
afraid
can't.
not.
Okay, I see.
So,
may I interject? Hi,
Please.
guys. It's Jason. It's Jason Kambitsa. Sorry, I've been clicking in and out and talking to Jeff and Brandon all night about this because I could hear it and couldn't hear it. But I think if Peter's unable to make it, Peter, I don't want to speak for you. We're prepared to proceed on November 18th. I think at this point a lot of conversation has happened. But Peter, you're more than welcome to interject.
Sure, and I don't disagree because I think there's, not in any way being presumptuous about the decision, but I've worked with Judy many times in the past with her decisions, and we've gone over really virtually all of the things and the give and take back and forth between the board and peer review. The only thing I would say is, sometimes the devil's in the details, and if there's something that comes up in terms of a not so much a legal point, but perhaps legal and anything on the conditions, Jason, then you might wish I was there. And I hate to ask the board, but, unfortunately the following week is Thanksgiving, which is a bad week. I don't know if you could meet another day, or 3 weeks might be too soon for Judy to have a decision and, for us all to review it. And I'm looking, the Wednesday is Veterans Day anyway. I guess you can't have a meeting on the 11th. Yeah. So,
I mean, I don't know, Monday or Tuesday of Thanksgiving week is always questionable well, I guess there's no travel this year, so
right.
Scratch that. But, I don't want to impinge on anybody's holiday time either. We could go out. We could do the 18th if the applicant wants to.
I'd be comfortable doing the 18th because if we have a further question that needs to be discussed, then we can all convene. And if it's anything, it would be minor at this point, I imagine.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I
We might
prefer to just go with the 18th.
No, that's fine, Jason. I appreciate, I'm
Yeah.
comfortable airing it publicly as you were. That's fine. And
Yeah.
again, with the Zoom, I mean, actually, Jason and team, you can always text me during your hearing, and I'll juggle 3 at one time maybe. But no, one of the other ones starts much earlier. So yeah, that as long as you're comfortable, Jason, that's fine.
I'm 100% comfortable, and I think the rest of the team is. So
So
my view is that it usually has taken us a couple of meetings just with the document in front of us to get it right and to go over questions and things. So, not delaying is maybe a good idea going forward on the 18th. And if we have questions, we can certainly, address them with Peter after that day, right after that day, and maybe come back for one more in December before the holidays. But 18th is fine with us without Peter, if that's okay with Peter and the applicant.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm fine with that.
Mr. Chair, just procedurally, if I could, is it all right in working on this draft if I collaborate, if you will, with Paul and with Attorney Freeman? I mean, so that there's no surprises when we get together on the 18th. Is that all right?
Absolutely. I mean, we've gone over, the high points are the waivers are the critical aspects. And so as long as I'm sure that you're not the one who gets to decide what we're waiving, that. So you're not going to deviate from what we've talked about, and the record's pretty clear. So I have confidence in that. There's nothing, I don't think anything in the law restricts you from, no, of course not, can communicate. The question is whether the board can communicate as a board. We can't do that, but you can pass us the product that you come up with before then, if you can pass us that. I'm not assuming that you can, but if you can, that's great, because then we can have it and go over it and be ready to talk about it.
Sure.
And Chair, if I can just say, Judy, would this be the appropriate time to bring town council in to review that draft as well?
I would let the board, it's totally up to you guys, but I would almost say, just given the experience of the board, let them kind of get the decision to where they're comfortable with it. And then, I mean, it's up to you guys, but.
I tend to agree, just because we haven't really run into conflicts here in this project because of where it is and lack of opposition and issues brought up by abutters. So I'm comfortable with that. I certainly would run it by council to make sure that, the provisions that we need in it are in it.
Right.
But let's take a look at what Judy and Peter come up with together, and hopefully we can talk about it in some substance on the 18th of November. So yes, Judy and Peter, feel free.
Peter, Paul, and Judy.
Yes.
Peter, yeah, that's right. Which one of you plays the guitar?
I do, actually. I have a 12 string.
Next time I expect it to be at the meeting. And what I would ask, I guess, your communications pass along so that we have them in the file and in the record to the extent anyone wants to look at them. But other than that, I think we're perfectly comfortable with that.
That's fine.
Could I just interrupt? Is there anybody in attendance, remote attendance from the town, from the public generally, who wishes to ask a question of the applicant or of the board at this time? Could you signal by raising your hand or chiming in verbally? Paul, I don't hear or see anybody. Do you agree?
Correct, and I don't see anyone in the chat room.
Yeah, okay. So we just like to give that opportunity at these meetings, as we do month to month, so that anybody who's interested can ask a question. With that, is there anything else on this matter tonight? Pat, Brennan, or Peter, or Judy, or Paul?
No, thanks.
And members, any other lingering questions? Or Chris Carmichael?
Nope.
Is there a motion then to continue this with the hope that we can really get into the decision next time, a decision form anyway, next time? Is there a motion to continue this to November 18th? Paul, is there anything, any regular hearings that have come in, applications?
Any new ones?
Yeah.
There are a couple of appeals.
So should we put this for 7:10, 7:15?
We can do that.
Why don't we say 7:15? Is there a motion to continue this till November 18th at 7:15 p.m.?
I'll make the motion to continue the meeting till November 18th at 7:15.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please. Mr. Wren, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Tenore, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And we'll look forward to getting more materials and new materials as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Everybody, good night.
Thank you. The board will continue on with just a couple other procedural things in just a second. Jim, I like that headset. Your microphone is noticeably good tonight. I mean, your vocal, I wonder, do I shout? Because I feel like I'm shouting because the camera's way over here. I wondered if I should try a mic like that too, you know, that you're just talking to normally, but.
It's from work.
No, but it's good.
I'm sitting at work.
Very clear though. We can hear everything you're saying. Whereas when people are into cameras, I'm often straining, so. Interesting. Anyway.
I just don't want you to hear all these monkeys.
What monkeys?
My whole group sitting over here.
Oh, I thought you were at home.
No, I'm at work.
Oh, jeez. I'm at work too.
We're going to make some, yeah, it's going to be a long night.
Paul's at work. We're all at work, aren't we? Okay. It's not going to be a real long night here. Don't worry. On the agenda, though, is the other 40B, right, Paul?
Yes.
I'm looking for the agenda so I can read it off. Next on our agenda is the continued public hearing 40B comprehensive permit for 253 Mansfield Ave, the applicant owner 253 Reservoir LLC. Paul, do you have an update?
Yeah, they asked for a continuance to the November 18th meeting. Again, this is in regards to the site also has submitted for one of the marijuana retail establishment applications. And so we're still making our way through that process. And so the applicant for the 40B has just, they're waiting to see what happens with that application for the marijuana retail.
Are they making any headway with that? I mean, I feel like we've made a couple, we've continued a couple times.
Well, we have a process. I'm one of the reviewers along with the Economic Development Commission and the town manager. We are reviewing 5 applications that ultimately will be, we will make a recommendation or ranking to the select board that ultimately will determine which 2 get to go forward in order to get a host community agreement, which is essentially the beginning steps, early stages for ultimately getting, all your needed licenses to get a marijuana establishment. So we will be reviewing our, actually this application, we've had the review of it, but the applicant now needs to respond to some questions next week. And then in a week or 2, we'll be finalizing our rankings.
Does this also depend on town meeting in the football stadium?
It does. It depends on that, because if it gets approved, then all 5 projects can go forward. If not, then only 2 can go forward because they're in industrial zoning.
I see.
And without, anyway, won't go there. But so the vote on Saturday is really crucial.
If it doesn't rain again.
Well,
right.
It's supposed to rain Friday.
Friday night. Abby.
Yeah, right. And Bill, right. So
we'll dig up that field. We've
been ready to go. The marijuana bylaw change and then the village center core. We've been ready to go since we were ready for the May town meeting. So, yeah. Yeah, well, in fact, with Village Center Core, we haven't made a change to it since February.
Well,
Selfishly on the marijuana, I'm glad to see it keep getting delayed. Keep it going.
Nothing to do with me. It's Corona, and it's been Corona and the weather. So
There's gonna be more of them than liquor stores in the next 10 years, unfortunately.
Yep.
Well,
There's actually a guy
Oh,
right
really?
now in Massachusetts seeking to put 65 of them in gas stations that he owns.
Yep.
well, there's
Gas
a
stations where?
legislative movement to try to allow more. Yeah,
Throughout
like
the whole state,
at the
eastern Massachusetts, he owns like 100 gas stations, and he's at the state right now trying to get approval on 65 gas stations. I'm actually pricing the cabinetry. It's like a small cabinet. And you walk in, you get your cigarettes, you get your weed, you get your gas. Why don't you pick up?
But that still goes town by town, I think, doesn't it?
There's something different happening between the CBD thing and everything else. I'm not too involved with this one, but we do a lot of dispensary work. So
Huh.
I'm not a fan, but it pays the bills.
I hope you get to make your cabinets. Yeah, really. Regardless of what goes in them, of course.
So again, they're seeking it. It's possible by November 18th. I don't want to predict because it has to go through the process,
Okay.
and I'm not sure when the select board will ultimately be making their recommendation on the two.
Just one thing to check on. I think the rule is we have 180 days from the date the application is filed. So some point coming up, we're going to need an extension explicitly in writing from the applicant. I guess they've asked to extend it each month. I understand. They've asked to continue it each month, but I think, something with the language, Amy can probably help us out with that, specifically extending the 180 days under section, whatever it is,
Right.
just to protect us. And I don't know when that date is, but can you look at that?
Right. We have it. I have the 180 days on there, and I want to say one of the original extensions they filed mentioned the 180 days.
Okay, well, maybe we have it already. I don't know. I'm just mentioning.
I'll find out tomorrow.
Okay. So we already put it off, didn't we? Or did we vote on this? No.
You haven't voted yet.
Is there a motion to put 253 Mansfield Ave, Chapter 40B application to November 18 at, say, 7:20 p.m.?
Jim, you want this one?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Just to confuse the chair.
Good
Vote.
luck, Nicole.
Mr. Denori, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Wren, don't disappoint me. How do you vote?
I'm tempted to say yes.
And I vote yes as well. So it is continued to 7:20 in reverse order, but it's continued. Then can we take just a couple minutes to do the minutes I sent around by email? And you know what, Lucas, I didn't hit you, but you weren't here for the meetings. I sent around slightly edited versions of the minutes from the August and the September meetings. I didn't change much, but they were sent around. So if you have the August, sorry, what is the date? I've got it here. Excuse me. Minutes of meeting held August 19, 2020 were distributed. Is there any comment on the minutes as edited, or is there a motion to approve the minutes for the record?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as edited.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Tenore, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Wren, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
I vote yes as well. Mr. Noel votes yes. Lucas, this is a crazy COVID-19 rule. We have to do roll call votes, I guess, for whatever reason, because we're not all in the same room.
Remote participation rules.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, but since we're all pictured, but that's how we have to do it.
It was probably drafted before video conferencing.
Yeah.
Thing.
Same thing for the meeting minutes of September 16th. I made just slight edits on those. and sent them out by email to you earlier today. If you want to review them now during the meeting, say so, but otherwise, is there a motion to, are there any changes, or is there a motion to approve the minutes of September 16, 2020?
I have one quick question,
Yeah.
because I wasn't at that meeting, but I reviewed it.
Oh, you're right. You shouldn't.
I shouldn't probably vote on that, even though I did view it via
you're right.
the link, but I should probably not vote on that.
No, you're right. It's Alan and David on this one. So
Correct.
I would ask them to move and second and vote.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting held on September 16th, 2020.
I will second it.
We know what we're doing here, don't we? Roll call vote. Mr. Wren, are you sure you want to vote yes?
Absolutely.
Mr. Bully, do you want to vote yes?
I do.
And Mr. Noel votes yes as well. Paul, be sure to dock Jim's paycheck for the month because he missed that meeting completely. Although he did listen, he was forced to listen.
I spent the whole Sunday afternoon, 2.5 hours viewing that.
Well, you didn't have a Pats game, so.
Exactly.
That must be worse, actually, than sitting through the meeting because you could speed up recordings, you can make it go faster, like 1.5 times.
Yeah, but that would be non-ethical.
I don't know. I think that's ethical. I'm a lawyer.
We should set it up like a training that you can't fast forward it. You have to sit through it.
I did. I sat through all of it.
I'm kidding.
I'm a lawyer, and I'll give you permission there. Holy, if you believe lawyers can be ethical.
Yeah, well.
Okay, so the minutes were approved. I'll just sign them and send them in, Paul, tomorrow. And is there anything else for us to do tonight? Hopefully not. Are there any bills and warrants? No. Paul, did you say 2 applications are on for November 18th, or we don't know yet?
I believe there are 2. One's a variance, one's an appeal. So, and Tom will need to talk offline about that appeal before you get it. So it's got a little history with it, and I just want.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Also, though, do we have the 157 Mansfield coming back on the 18th? No, they withdrew the second.
They withdrew it.
Yeah, they withdrew.
That's right. Sorry, I was thinking we continued the second one. I have the drafts from Nicole on the 2 decisions we made last time, so I'll get those in the next couple of days, Paul.
And I assume you want a decision on the withdrawal as well.
She did. Nicole sent me something. I haven't opened them up yet. I haven't looked at them. But
okay, so you actually have 3 decisions. You have the.
Yes, you're right. Oh, wait a minute. That's right. I think she's
Great Woods Circle.
I think Nicole only sent me 2, so you're right. We should check on that.
Yeah. Okay.
But I haven't looked at them yet, and maybe there were 3 there. I don't mean to misspeak.
I think she sent all 3.
Okay, I'll take a look, and I'll take a look for the email of yesterday too. Again, by the way, the email thing that changed over the weekend, I just saw an instruction tonight that it now password has to be 7 characters, only 7. Is that why I can't change my password? Because
I am not the person to ask.
Listen, they reset my password, and I kept it as Norton 2020 with a pound sign. I've kept it, and it works. Shh.
Jim, you're public here. You can't. You have to change it now.
I was going to say.
Yeah, but no one knows my username.
Okay.
Without the username, they can't get in.
It's not that hard to figure out.
Figure out the username, but
Hey Jim, what's your social security number?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, we gotta write that down. Yeah. What do you do for work? No. Somebody's gonna go in and compromise the entire system now.
Oh yeah, because
I'm
they're
gonna do
viewing
it,
this.
Now nobody will be able to find out who, so I'm gonna go do it. Okay, thanks very much. It was a good meeting. We got through a lot, and we're moving through this, pretty methodically. Paul, thanks. Anything else for tonight?
No, that's it.
Want to just hang out?
You can adjourn.
Is there a motion to adjourn at 9:57?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Oh, at 8:57.
8:57.
8:57. Did I hear Nicole?
No, Peter.
Ah! It's me!
Sorry, Peter. I didn't really hear. I just heard in the corner of my ear. Motion to adjourn at 8:57, Mr. Tenori?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any public comment on this, Peter? No,
Oh.
Peter wants to get out too. All those in favor of adjournment at 8:57? Mr. Tenori?
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
Thank you. See you all later.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Good night.